What do you got here?
Here's an article that came out, July 20th. So it's a couple of days old, but it's an interesting topic. It's something that we talk about a lot in our conversations, James. But Mary Erdoes, she's the CEO of JPMorgan Chase's wealth management and asset management practice, uh, did an interview with David Rubenstein and said that bankers need to work 72 hours in order to master their craft. I think, hearing that, I think depending on where you fall on the issue, no one's apathetic. I think you either agree strongly or you disagree strongly. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on just that as an idea.
Um, it makes sense, but I think it really goes against everything that people are pushing for right now. You tune into LinkedIn and there's someone telling you you only need to work 35 hours. Tell your boss you want to work less. And then you see this, and I'm sure if you jump in the comment section, everyone's like, well, this is stupid. But when you think about it, this is what I thought about when I started my career off in tech was if I put in 60 hours a week, I'm getting 50% more experience than a person working 40 hours a week. And that combination with, studying nonstop is what helped me launch a tech career as a teenager, right? I was able to hit that fast forward button and have 5 years of experience while some of these other people might have only had 2 or 3. So my resume and my little consulting portfolio looks stacked. And I think that's what we're seeing here. It's what I have a friend that's a partner at one of the largest law firms in the Midwest. Same concept, right? They bring in a new associate, and the associate's like, "Oh, this is so much work," but they're trying to hit the fast forward button. Do you want to be 30 years old and then you finally got all the law experience figured out, right? And I think you might be able to confirm this, but it's pretty similar if you're a doctor, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen my wife, who is a doctor, try to get her medical school done, get residency done. It's grueling hours for sure.
But it's like they want to get us in the medical field. They want to get as much exposure as possible. You already spent like 50 years going to school, and if you don't hurry up and get the experience, you're not going to actually be in a practice until you're like 45 years old. So a lot of these complicated type of jobs, this is how you get there faster. But it really goes against this whole life's not about work movement right now. And it's a whole other conversation because I think life is a little bit about work because you got to work to make money to live. But we can get in that conversation another day.
Yeah, I think you bring up, being a doctor. It's interesting though, because I still hear stories from my wife about that bifurcation of like personality. So, there are some people who will happily put in the extra hours because they know that they're learning something or they're getting exposure to something new. And then there are people that want to check out at 40 hours, 0.5. So it still happens even in that field.
Well, we're getting more programmed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And before it was do whatever's necessary to get to where you want to be. And now, what I think it's funny to me because people want to change the rules. They're like, well, that's the old way. And because that's the old way, it needs to be changed because nothing old could possibly be right. And I see the people try to do this and then they fail. And then they'll make some other excuse on, the system made me fail. It wasn't a system. It's that the old way actually worked. Not everything needs to be changed. It was that way for a reason. And, I had a buddy pull the same shit, right? He wants to make 6 figures, but he only wants to work 40 hours. Now, Kane, I'm sure there's people out there doing it, right? Probably highly specialized, in demand, or just flipping great at what they do. I don't know anyone making 6 figures working less than 40 hours. Most of them are working 50, 60 hours or more. And to be honest, to do that, somewhere in their career, they're probably working 70 plus hours.
Right.
To build up that expertise. And then when he didn't hit 6 figures in 40 hours, it's this corporation sucks, this whole industry sucks. No, you suck.
Yeah.
Right? Your mentality sucks, because if it was that easy to make 100 grand in 40 hours, everybody would do it, right? So we keep saying we're going to change these rules and work less and less and less. And it's like, well, this online article said you're not really productive if you work beyond 34 hours. Man, that's bullshit. Okay.
Yeah.
You know how many times I heard someone tell me that? And if you look at my portfolio, I own over, a dozen companies and brands, and I started with nothing.
Hmm.
So it worked for me. And then they're telling me that I didn't need to do that. So they tried their way, but they didn't get anywhere. So, you just tried your way and it didn't fucking work. So it's that thought of, even let's use the doctor or even the lawyers, for example. You might be doing crazy work Monday through Friday and you are burnt out. It doesn't mean Saturday you still can't be productive.
Mhm.
Where, for example, some Saturdays when I was building a recruiting company, I sent a lot of emails. I'd get my emails done. I'd get some writing done. I'd do some marketing. Maybe I wasn't full on recruiting. I was getting some my sales information ready for next week. The most mundane, I did invoices on Saturday. I paid bills on Saturday. So you can't, that's stuff that I don't want to do at 2 o'clock on a weekday because that's high productive time.
Mhm.
So this whole thought of you can't work that much and be productive, it's like, well, because we go out and seek the information we want to hear. We want someone to tell us work less, working more is futile. Like, but it doesn't seem to be the case for doctors and lawyers. And as I always say, no one ever told the rock band they're practicing too much.
Yep.
They could sit in a garage playing for 2 days straight, perfecting their craft. I know a guy that, he's got, platinum records on the wall and Grammy nods. It's like I had a story about him where he's like literally in the booth for like 24 hours trying to record a song straight. Because that's what it takes to get a Grammy nod.
Mhm.
No one rolled up on him and say, hey, you need to chill out and go rest. And it's usually the people that do that are the ones that never want anything. They never put in this like crazy max effort or made great sacrifices to achieve the highest goals, right? So at some point you need to tune all these people out who are not where you want to be. And my thought is, when I read this article here, this is what it probably takes to make it in Wall Street right now. And if you don't like those rules, find another game.
Completely agree. The CEO, Mary Erdoes, she ties it to trying to gain mastery. The idea that, if you're able to put in the 72 hours a week, you'll master this craft in 3 years versus 5 years that it would take if you did it, 40 hours a week. And I think that those 2 years on a compounded basis matter a lot in the grand scheme of a career, right? So what do you think of that from like a training perspective? Should younger people be working more hours in order to gain that mastery? How do you view that?
I say whatever the person wants to do with their life is fine. I'm not one of those people. I'm on 24/7, 360. I don't care. Right.
Yeah.
I was in a hospital bed about to die and I wanted my laptop. That's me though. I think if you want to work 30 hours a week and you can get by and live and you're happy, I say cool. I don't think everyone's got to be on the grind. Not everyone's got to be in hustle mode. Now, for those people that want to get somewhere, this is a different story. Then it's you use the 20s. It's hard talking to someone in their 20s right now because they got all the answers. They came out of school. My professor said this. My parents said that. They said I'm the smartest person in the world. And it's like, well, shit. Come back to me when you're 32. We'll have a whole different. We'll crack a bottle of whiskey. We're gonna have a different conversation.
Yeah.
They got it all figured out. And the thing is, you don't. I say 20s is when life is less complicated. You're kind of free. You're not tied down with the spouse if you choose to have one day. You're not tied down with kids if you're choosing to have them one day. So once you're married and you got 2 kids and a great opportunity comes up across the country, it's hard to say yes. I don't want to uproot. I got my in-laws are the babysitters. The kids are in school. I don't want to uproot them and move. And your 20s is your time to do that. It's the same time where you can work 60, 70 hours and you're not really impeding on anybody else, right? Your spouse isn't waiting for you to get home, or your kids, or you don't have soccer practice to go to. The 20s is that time frame when you can just make the sacrifices, put your head down and work. And again, we're trying to change those rules and we're not doing that. And you're watching people think, I'm 30 years old, I'm finally going to take shit seriously. The problem is there's someone that started at 22 and now they got 8 years of experience on you. And if they're working 72 hours a week, they got more like 15 years of experience on you.
Right.
And then you just can't win. And you're sitting there staring down 50, 100 grand in school loans. You heard Gary Vee or whoever it is say, hey, you don't need to figure it out in your 20s. And you read some social media advice and then you're 32 years old and lost. And my thought is when you come out of college, just go. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you need to go and maximize this time while life is less complicated. You can get up, this whole like get up early or work late, do both. Get up early, go to the gym, be the first into the office, bust your ass, stay late. People don't, if you ever notice, people don't really do shit Monday through Thursday for the most part. But they're always in a big rush to get out of work and they just go home and watch Netflix. Mm-hmm. You could have worked till 6 and you still could have went out and caught drinks with your friends and shit and been home by 8 o'clock. You could have got 2 episodes of Netflix and it's still good to bed. But it's like we're programmed to think that we can't do this like work. We can't do fun stuff on work days and we don't want to do work stuff on fun days. So Monday till like 5 p.m. Friday is all work. You can't do nothing fun. And then Friday till like Sunday afternoon is all play and I can't do no work. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not work-life balance. And I think you told me a story about, people in China do it a little bit differently.
Yeah. So in China, they do not everybody, but a lot of tech companies, a lot of kind of high growth IT firms typically employ this 996 system. And it basically says you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. So that ends up being about a 72-hour work week. And, there are critics, of course, but, people like Jack Ma and Richard Liu down here, that, they attribute that kind of a schedule to extreme success, right? I mean, Jack Ma here says that there's no way to achieve success without paying extra effort and time, and that the 996 schedule is a huge blessing. But, I grew up in Hong Kong and Asia, and one of the big kind of cultural differences that I see between that side of the world and here in America is that kind of the segmentation of time that you talk about, James. The idea that on a Monday night, at least here and where we're in the cities that we work, the people typically switch off at 6, right? The restaurants are all closed at 6:30, 7, and there's not much that you can do. Whereas, I feel like out there, especially in Hong Kong, that work-life balance is clearer. So, people will work till 6, 7. There's kind of pride in being the last one out of the office. But then it's, okay, I'll go get dinner with my family, or I'll go get dinner with colleagues afterwards. And then, there are the rules that we put in place here. I feel like they don't really apply. It's just an interesting way to do things. One of the biggest things my wife and I talk about all the time, the biggest differences that we notice when we compare living and working here in the States to living and working in Asia.
It seems like New York's that way. You tend to, I feel like the people I know in New York, they go into work a little later in the morning, but they work later, but they don't go home afterwards unless they got a dog. And even then they have someone that usually takes care of the dog. They don't go home. They work till 6, 6:30, sometimes 7 o'clock, and then they go out to the bar or restaurant. They go to whatever some league they're doing. They don't go home. They're always out doing something. And, I mean, the 72-hour week's not for everybody. But if you're trying to get somewhere in a certain profession, it probably is. But that mixing of like work, life, and the balance, no one ever does shit on Saturday mornings. Not saying everyone, that's me talking, but when I start pinging people and they tell me they want to get somewhere, I'm like, what do you do Saturday morning? And when you really dive into it, they don't really do anything till about 2:00 at the earliest, right?
Yeah.
My friends in the cities, sometimes they go to brunch. But the thought is, so could you wake up early? When I say early, 7, 8 o'clock, right? You're not a teenager, you don't need to sleep until noon. If you want to get somewhere, could you still work out and do 2 to 3 hours of work in the morning when you weren't doing anything anyways? And you could still, like, that is not impeding on your personal life in any matter. I know some people that get up and go for bike rides, or they go fishing, or they go to the beach. Fine, that's cool. But if you're just at home, why not get some shit done? Crack your laptop open, answer your emails, reach out to some customers, get some writing done, get some coding done, get set up for Monday. And it's like we're taught that, it's Saturday. I don't want to work on a Saturday. That mindset never seems to align with the people that make it. I look at like sports stars. I think Michael Jordan was like, oh, it's Saturday morning, I'm not going to practice my free throws.
Right.
The same thing. If you shoot 3,000, free throws a day, and he's over there shooting 10,000, it's a crazy number, by the way. But, if he's getting 3 times more experience on the court every day, where do you think he's going to end up?
Right.
And I don't think this is rocket science to anybody, except the people that just don't want to work more, because nobody wants to make the sacrifice to put the effort in anymore, right? It's diet pill syndrome. You could put the fork down and go for a walk, but you don't want to do that. You want to take a pill and then lose 10 pounds before you're standing up in your best friend's wedding. So that is what's kind of crushing a lot of careers right now. So you see the people that are making it. The rules of the game haven't changed. You're going to put in the work. You're going to make the sacrifices. You're going to log the hours. There's very few people that just get to skip. They get to skip to the head of the line. And those people that do, they're special. Most people are not.
Right. Yeah. So that's a great point. So in preparing for this conversation, James, I looked up a little bit of a history behind the 40-hour work week, where it came from and stuff. So a couple data points for you. The 40-hour work week is popularized by Henry Ford in 1926. So before that, there were a couple instances of kind of, legislation and things going in to try and shorten the work week, but people were working 80 to 100 hours a week prior to that point. And then, kind of World War I, World War II starts to roll in. And that's when we start getting these, like the Fair Labor Act of 1938. That's where we move to a 44-hour work week that's mandated by the government. And then in 1940, it goes down to 40 hours. So that's a little bit of the history. And then I thought, okay, well, going back to Erdoes' point here about mastering a craft, what's the typical breakdown of productivity in a day? So if the goal is to get 10,000 hours before you feel like you master something, and maybe that's not everybody's goal in life, but surely for a significant proportion, it should be, right? You want to be good at what you do. A breakdown of a day typically goes down to like 45% of your day is working on your primary job duties. 40% of your day is meetings, administrative stuff, interruptions, and then about 15% is email. So only half of your day actually is actual kind of mastery work, mastering your craft. So again, if the goal is to reach 10,000 hours and the goal is to master your craft, you really got to put in the time. Otherwise, you just fall behind. The world is competitive.
Someone's going to leave you behind.
For sure.
And there's another stat. My friends, and a lot of times it's just business associates, and they know my story. They know I own and run a handful of career consulting companies, and I'm a business investor and whatnot. So it's like, you need to talk to my son. And I just don't want to do that anymore. But when I start talking about hard work, their idea of work is that I was in the chair all day. And then I'm like, well, it sounds like you're really good at keeping a chair warm. And when you dive into it, you find out they're not busting their ass for 40 hours a week. There's a stat out there somewhere, and I think it came from one of the big consulting firms, that Americans have about 23 or 24 hours of real work per week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, sales jobs, if you're a mortgage person, like you're on the phone all day, different kind of industry, right? Recruiting industry, you're on the phone all day. It's work. Mm-hmm. You want to build a work ethic, you get in the mortgage industry or you get in the recruiting industry. But I'm listening to this kid complain about being overworked on 40 hours a week, and he kind of fits in line with that 23 or 24 hours of real work. And I'm like, so you're only working like half the week, and you're saying you're overworked right now? And the thing is, he didn't even really realize that until you started diving in. It's just what he has been programmed to believe. That you're overworked, every boss is an asshole, every corporation's greedy, and there's many out there, trust me. But this just wasn't the case for him. And he's not where he wants to be, because he went to a good college and he got in a big company, and he thinks he should be further ahead. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, you're working 40 hours, but you're only working like 20. You're not mastering a craft. You're not putting in the extra work. You know, he's one of those people that if his work's done, he doesn't go ask for more work. He just sits at his desk. And it's like, well, you're okay just collecting 20 hours a check to be staring at a monitor. Like, to me, it's like, that's not what I did. It's like, what else can I do? How can I help? But I realized it was just trying to change his mindset of work. But this whole thought of 40 hours, like, are you working 40 hours? Now, Henry Ford, if you're on the assembly line, you're working 40 hours. Mm-hmm. They had that perfectly timed. You worked 40 hours. The corporate America jobs, a lot of them, they need you there, and they know they have to pay you for 40 hours and give you benefits to keep you. But they don't always have 40 hours of work for you. So the thought that this kid was ever going to master anything, at 20 hours a week, how long is it going to be before he gets 10,000 hours?
Yeah, right.
And to me, that's the crazy part of it. But again, he's got like this, he's not satisfied with life. He feels like he's coming up short. It's leading to a little bit of depression. He feels like he should be further ahead. But it really comes down to the decisions he's making right now. And it's like, you're just not going to get, he's not going to get anywhere even if he just works a solid 40 hours, right? As we're reading from this. I'm thinking about out of all the companies I own, even the ones I'm invested in, for most of them, it takes about 2 years for someone that doesn't come from each industry. It takes them about 2 years. So let's just say 4,000 hours to get a good grip on the job. Mm-hmm. Not a master. They're productive. They don't have to ask a lot of questions, and they got a foundation they can start building on. It's usually 5 years when people just start to crush it on all levels. No questions asked. I don't have to figure this out. I don't have to Google it. I just know. Well, 2,000 hours a year times 5 is, 10,000, right?
Yep. So
unless you're one of those like top 1% wicked, smart Matt Damon from Good Will Hunting type of people, yeah. This was pretty much spot on, where you need about 5 years of just work. Now, you can do that at 40 hours a week, or you can do it at 72. For me personally, I want to get there now. I understand if you keep grinding, you're eventually going to get there. I don't want to eventually get there. I want to get there in 2 years so I can be even further ahead at 5 years. And this is Wall Street right now. Like, you're in the number 1 MBA program in the world right now. Do you think anyone in your program would be arguing about working 72 hours?
No.
So again, this life ain't for everybody. If you want to work on the line at Ford 40 hours a week and you're happy, what's the benefit of working 70 hours a week on the line at Ford? It's overtime. Yeah. My father worked 7 days a week in a steel factory, never complained once. You know what? He wanted the overtime. There was no mastering the craft for him. It was just more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on the line at Ford and you're putting screws and headlights, you're just going to do that for 72 hours instead of 40 hours, except you're going to get overtime for that extra. So you may not be mastering a craft, but you get more money. If you are mastering a craft, then you eventually end up making more money. Either way, you put the work in, you end up making more money.
And I think that there's a really good Scott Galloway line, which is there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's just trade-offs. And I think that speaks to that perfectly, right? Like on both sides of the candle, you've got either you make more money by working a little bit more, which feeds your family, which gives you a better lifestyle if that's how you want to do it, or you learn something and you use that to grow a career. I just the idea of wasting time doing things that aren't productive, it's a strange thing. So it speaks to something that as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking more and more about, which is expectations, right? So where do you think this has come from, this idea around work that, okay, I want to work less, and less, but I my expectations for what I should achieve at the age of 30, at the age of 35, at the age of 40 should match, for example, the generation before, the generation two generations ago. But I feel like I should work less. It seems like entitlement to me, but I'm curious to know your thoughts there.
I don't even know if it's entitlement. I see the trend so much. I mean, a couple companies we own are in recruiting, so we deal with people all day. And the other business that's in that bucket anyways is career consulting and resume writing. It's like, so every day, all day, all you hear is people's stories about careers and where they want to go and what they want to do, but they all sound the same. And this is for 20 years, Kane, and every year it gets worse. So when I look at 2 decades of dealing with people's careers and it's that widespread, the only common denominator I see here is the schools. Whether it's coming from K through 12 or the colleges, somewhere in the mix, like we are programming the kids to say, life's not about work and you deserve a lot more for doing less. And maybe that's also, parents went through these same schools, so they start teaching their kids that, and then their kids go to schools and they get taught that, and now they're just kind of programmed to think that I should work 30, 35, even 40 hours seems like too much, but I should make $100,000. Hell, I had one kid tell me once, he had no experience, basically doing nothing, and he had an MBA, and he's like, well, my professor said I should be making 85,000. And I'm like, doing what? Like, you can, that's not just him, it's multiple people that said stuff like that. You can barely bold and italic shit in Excel, but you want $85,000 because your professor said so. Now, the problem is his professor's never actually signed a front of check for anybody in his life. Mm-hmm. He's never employed anybody. He's never created a job. He's, it's easy to sit back and say that because it's, I'm going to justify all this money I just charged you for this MBA. But he had no experience. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't going to be worth $85,000 one day or more. But at that point in time, just because you had the luck to sit in front of this professor, you're worth 85 grand. It's like, no. So when I see like this many people sounding like this, and they all sound the same, I just think it's the schools. So instead of saying, hey, your number one priority in life is to provide for yourself and your family, we're saying, no, go chase your passion and do what you love. And if you don't do that, then every other job is meaningless. This is all coming from the schools, in my opinion, and probably partly the parents.
Yeah, that makes sense. The idea that compensation is tied to value is coming to mind for me. And I was just curious, James, if you could speak a little bit to that as someone who's, set up tons of businesses and is successful. How do you view compensation as it's tied to value? Do you think people have lost sight of that? Do you feel like people just assume that they should be paid at, a certain amount of money? Yeah, I mean, they do because of that story you just told, but just that idea there.
I don't know. I got a friend that owns a company. and we got in this conversation recently, and the thought is, someone found out someone was making more, and it caused a big stink at their place, and then they had a hard time communicating that, or they started bringing in, well, my friend at such and such company makes this, and it's like, well, do you really know what your friend? Like, everyone thinks, like, as far as skills go and personality traits, that everybody's equal.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not. We are all have strengths and weaknesses that are so varying, you can't really put an exact value on each one of those. But gonna rewind. The kid that wanted to make, the $100,000 on a 40-hour week. He had a buddy that was making like 165,000 or something. And it's like, well, how much does he work? And he like, well, he works Fridays, he works Saturdays, and sometimes he works Sundays. So, probably mid 50s, high 50s a week. And I'm like, well, how much do you see that guy ever posting on like Twitter and Facebook and like that type of stuff? He's like, during the day, or how often do you get text messages from him? He's like, well, I don't. Usually it's like at night. And I'm like, so this guy's like tuned in, working, 6.5 days a week. He's not screwing around on social media. He's not text. He's focused, laser focused on making money. And he's making $165,000. And what this guy doesn't realize is, well, that laser focus is worth more money.
Mm-hmm.
Back to how productive are you in that time frame? So, anyways, friends going through this, trying to like explain to this person that feels like this other person's making more than him, and it's like, well, this other person is extremely reliable. They're dependable. They always show up. They never call off. I can always count on them. If I ask them to do something, I've never had to ask them twice in their entire tenure here. If I ask them to do something, I can guarantee it's done. This person will always help somebody else out. They will stay after hours and help somebody else out. Just uplifting and reliable, and they get their work done. They make the customers happy. That shit is all worth more than anything else sometimes. And I think the person he was dealing with couldn't understand that while they were good at their job, they're the person that often called off on Monday or Friday because, they got the flu for the 7th time in 2 months. That they're also one that is always kind of talking shit and trying to drag other people down in the company. And they keep their job because they do a good job at the job. But can you count on them? Can you bank on them doing what is asked of them without, he's got to follow up with this guy, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these things that you can demand a salary. I think you're worth this because I have this experience or I have this degree. And then there's all these other things that make you a great employee. And those things are worth more money. I know a lot of people that own companies, especially in the hospitality industry, where they may not be the smartest people in the world, but they're often the highest paid because of they're reliable, they're dependable. Their general presence makes you happy. They make the work environment fun. They make reasonably good decisions. And it's like, well, that stuff's of just more value. So when I see people think I deserve X, it's like, well, experience and education aside, let's talk about all these personality and behavioral traits, right? How often do you see people write or talk about this?
Not often.
Because we don't want to talk about that.
Right.
So I don't know.
At the end of the day, kind of closing thoughts here, James, it would be nice, I think. Everyone that I know that is successful, I include you in that bucket, I would imagine, Mary Erdoes, the CEO of JPMorgan Chase's wealth management division, is relatively successful. Everyone subscribes to this idea that you got to work. And it'd be nice if we could all work 40 hours and, have, spend our evenings volunteering at the shelter and go on hikes. But the reality is that, the world is competitive, and you've got to be able to add value to companies in order to kind of see the returns that you want to see. So 72-hour weeks, it's not for everybody, but I think there's a reality to her message that I think resonates with a lot of people, and then maybe the other people don't want to hear it, but probably deep down know that it's true.
The thing is, you can work more than 40 hours and you can still volunteer at that shelter and you can still go on.
Right. That's true.
Let me ask you this question. When you lived in Hong Kong, how many people were sitting around and binging Netflix?
I don't know. My circle, not many. It seemed like the streets were always busy, so people weren't at home. But a blanket statement.
Yeah, when I talk to people in the big cities, I don't hear them. It's that like the whole life's kind of different, and I'm not saying that's everywhere, but just that general thought of I'm gonna go to work and then I'm gonna go do stuff and I'm gonna come home late and I'm gonna go to bed. I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna go to work. There's a chart somewhere that shows like extremely successful people versus the not very successful, and the activities they do.
Yeah.
And if you look, the people that aren't very successful, one of the highest time most spent category, top 5, I think, is TV. Even if you look at the most successful people, TV's like at the bottom. Some shit like yoga is number 3. They're outside, they're doing stuff, right? They're getting fit. They're learning, it's just funny when you look at those two things. And again, it's that thought of, at least in America anyways, Monday through Friday, it's a work day, so I can't go to volunteer, or I can't go for that hike, or I can't do these things.
Right.
And it's like, hate Mondays and then live for Fridays. And it's like, well, you spend 5 out of 7 days kind of hating life to live for 2 days. And then you wonder why you don't end up where you want to be and you don't have a great amount of satisfaction in life.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
yeah.
That's about all I got for this one.
Yeah, it's a good talk.
So, all right, I'll catch you.
Bye.